snake charmers, like those cobras are in the baskets because that's where they keep the time. The old time.
That's where they keep the time.
Like the last piece of commentary, he was like in a pool drinking with some French people. Like just being like, hey, I found some people to talk to in their hot tub.
Let's profile the water throwers.
yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Si vous écoutez, je te vois le haut de la montagne. Je bon.
They've been having some live mic issues where like Bob Roll was saying like, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck, TJ? What the like? They all like got into a fight on a hot mic. Well, it's pretty hilariously bad. It's been a joy.
Well, speaking of hot,
oh my God.
Shall we get into the book we're here to talk about today?
Yeah, let's do it. We're doing Ray Bradbury's 1951 classic ? It's certainly assigned very, very, very often in high schools across this country. I don't know where it's been challenged. That was one of my questions for you, maybe in this part.
Yeah, let me look that up. I believe it's a 1953 publication date too, which is confusing since you have the number 51.
Yeah, I've got a copyright 51 in mind, but who knows? Like who knows how those things go? Yeah, copyright 1951, 53, 67 by Ray Bradbury.
Maybe the book was copyrighted before it was printed.
Huh, interesting. I would like to know
more about that. Okay, let's see. I'm looking for the banned book projects. Here we go. I did hear it was banned in South Africa shortly after it came out, which makes some sense. Fahrenheit 51. Huh. The banned books. Okay, in 1967, it was censored. In 1992, obscenities were once again censored in Texas by the school system. A more recent attempt happened in 2006 where the novel was challenged in Texas for going against religious beliefs. Because a Bible was banned and burned, interestingly enough, even though the book takes a stance against that. It looks like it's happened once or twice. I'm not sure if it is currently under fire, as it were.
Wow, what an interesting... Yeah, it definitely can fall into the realm of, like... It definitely has a little bit of the Bruce Springsteen, Born in the USA, like the misinterpretation of the text,
or like the reverse of that.
Exactly,
right?
Oh gosh, we better get rid of this book. It says bad things about the Bible.
They burnt a Bible in this book. Which is like the book is explicitly against burning the Bible, not because it's the Bible per se, but because it represents human knowledge and beauty. The book begins. We meet Montag, a fireman, and fireman. We gather that he lives in the future of when the book is written. Also, probably the future of now, because at one point there's a reference to there being 2 atomic wars since 2022. So we're maybe in the 2030s, 2040s. The book's written in the 50s. So, where he's projecting forward 70 or 80 years into the future at the time. Montag is a fireman, and a fireman in the future, they don't put fires out, they start them. And they generally start them when they have learned that somebody is hiding books in their home. Montag is coming home from his commute. He likes his job. He's in a good mood, so he thinks, and he encounters Clarice McClellan, a teenage girl, and she kind of jars him. She asks him, does he ever read the books? And she suggests that firemen used to help people by putting out fires as opposed to burning their houses, which is startling to him. And then she asks him if he's happy, and he finds that very startling, and it leads him to start thinking and reconsidering his life. And I'll kick it over to you.
He comes home and he finds his wife Mildred in bed, and kind of discovers through sort of stumbling around a dark room that she has taken an entire bottle of sleeping pills. Not, we discover, out of a active desire to commit suicide. Maybe this seems like this is something that kind of happens in the society. He calls operators who are less EMTs and more just kind of like technicians that pump her stomach, say that she's going to wake up hungry. She does wake up hungry. Montague sort of gets his courage up to be like, you took a bunch of sleeping pills last night. And she kind of shrugs it off. I was like, that's silly. I wouldn't do that. She is also obsessed with something called the parlors, which is kind of like a 3-walled TV experience that we learn about. And back at work, we get to see Montague at work. They respond to a call. They go to a place where there's a woman who refuses to abandon her house that's full of books. They burn the books and they burn the woman inside the house. And I'll kick it back to you.
That which is very alarming to Montague. He tries to get her to leave and she won't, and he's kind of haunted by the image of her burning to death. And so he takes a day off. He's feeling bad, and Captain Beatty, his boss, shows up at the house and sort of tries to talk him back into the fold by dumping a lot of exposition on him. And we learn the whole history of sort of why books are now being burned. It doesn't work. The persuasion doesn't work. It does work.
I mean, does that work for you? Like would you call in sick and your boss comes and is like, well, Jesse, let me tell you about the history of the company.
No. But I think that maybe in a little bit of role reversal, I think it might be on purpose. I mean, the explanation is meant to be thin. We're meant to sympathize with Montague, who is not reassured. Yeah. But it is a bit strange. Beatty is an interesting character because he sort of like embodies everything that he stamps out in some respects too. But shortly after this, we learn that Montague has actually stolen, at first we think maybe one book, but then it turns out several books and hidden them in the house. He kind of sort of confesses as much to Montague, low-key. He was like, what if a friend of mine happened to steal a book? It was like asking for a friend, sort of thing. But Montague is really shaken up and he decides he's going to read the books. He's going to see what knowledge they've been destroying. And then he contacts Faber, who's this old man who he met in a park. And he has a feeling that Faber still reads books or would like to. And Faber agrees to help him resist the firemen and the book burning and agrees to sort of work with him to kind of subvert the system. And he gives him this earpiece that he can use to spy on Beatty and talk with him.
Beatty, we get the sense that Beatty has kind of seen this stuff before and maybe even been tempted himself. He's certainly very well read. That's one of the traits of Beatty is that he seems to...
When he's old enough to remember when there were still books too, like he's
one of my questions that we'll get to in a little bit. But Montague goes back to work and there's this kind of uncomfortable scene where they're all playing poker and they all sort of very clearly mistrust Montague. They go out on a call and I don't know about you, but like 10 pages before that, I was like, let me guess, it's Montague's house. And sure enough, they show up at Montague's house. Mildred has dropped the dime on Montague and runs off. There's what seems to be a climactic confrontation between Montague and Beatty. Montague uses the flamethrower that he's carrying around, kills Beatty, mostly because Beatty has discovered the earpiece and is going to go track down Faber and, probably kill him too. Montague is attacked by the mechanical hound, which is very clearly a rat thing to Neil Stephenson's Snow Crash. And and then Montague kind of then it becomes a chase for pretty much the rest of the book, as the state is trying to track down Montague and he is trying to escape the city. And I'll kick it back to you to wrap it up.
So Montague eludes him in the sort of timeless way of men being pursued by hounds. He takes to the river. And it works. There is another scene. Speaking of scenes, I feel like the exact same thing happens in The Running Man, where the people who are chasing... Well, by the way, the chase of the hound going after Montague is being televised, which is very prescient. I don't know if there were ever televised manhunts in 1950s. This is 40 years before O.J. Simpson and that sort of thing.
Prescient, and also like a bit of a clunky plot device.
The chase is televised. Everybody's watching it, and because of that, they need a scapegoat because Montague gets away. So the hound kills some poor hapless guy who's just out for a walk. Montague knows this because he fetches up down the river, finds some railroad tracks, walks on them, spots a bonfire, and then finds a bunch of hobos who have a battery-powered television, who are all former academics and intellectuals who have taken to the woods and are living in the woods. And we learn that they have all memorized at least one book. Because they don't want to get caught with books, and nobody can know that they have a book in their head unless they admit it. So it's a way of eluding the authoritarian book burning. They're preserving human knowledge. Montague joins this band, and then very shortly after, the nuclear war that has been looming for the last several days suddenly happens, and the city that Montague has recently escaped from is completely incinerated by a nuclear strike. And then Montague and some of the intellectuals think, well, at least we have the books, so we have the knowledge of humanity, and we can rebuild like the phoenix emerging from the ashes. And that's pretty much it, right?
Yeah, that's it. I love your little note here. Then the world ends.
Yes. It's not quite that the world ends, but it's close. Well, you mentioned the mechanical hound and the rat thing, which was definitely something I noticed. My first question for you is, how many of the writers we have considered or books we have considered bear the influence of this book?
A lot. I mean, the rat thing for sure. There was another one that I had in my brain and now I can't, but definitely Philip K. Dick is also in here, like, absolutely.
I mean, the conversations that Montague has with his wife are very similar to Decker and his wife, and they're kind of bland. Even the mood organ, like, I think there's even a reference to like the theremin sting. Yes, but continue. I cut quite a few, I think, but continue.
Yeah, and I think, like, I mean, there's a lot of really great scene painting in here. Like, one of my favorites was the helicopters that can become beetles. Like, that was one of my favorite visual moments of it. And, like, very Stevensonian. And gosh, I'm really struggling to pick up the other influence that that came through.
I thought the burning was an influence on Octavia Butler and the pyro drug.
Yes, that is a very good. That's a very good point.
I think there's something.
All of Zodiac. It's the same structure, especially when we get to the like fleeing the fleeing the city and going to the woods and like bumping into, like, you get this sort of like a little uncomfortable noble savaging of what just turns out to be a bunch of white guys in the woods, but like that did really feel very Zodiac. I was like, oh wow, there's a real homage here in the
the escape from the oppressor into the woods
with a helicopter,
from the helicopter in which our hero then has to reconstitute himself in order to complete his quest. Yeah, absolutely. I think The Handmaid's Tale bears the influence of it. I think in particular, it's a little bit more tenuous, but the certainly the kind of creeping approach of the authoritarian state, but also kind of the pairing, just the focus of the relentless life of the city versus the countryside, and how the countryside equals escape, and probably some other things too. I thought The Arrest bears elements of it, in particular. That kind of being obsessed with that question of what stories and what knowledge do we preserve and how do we do that? That's kind of one of the themes of that book. I'm trying to think of what else, but William Gibson,
yes,
I think.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I think it's not Sheba City, but there's Night City that gets referenced. And like,
yeah.
I mean, yeah, you can really, there was a lot of Neuromancer in here. Some also in the sort of nature of like the clunkiness of the prose and the exposition and the like, what is actually happening here, kind of thing. And then in the other direction, there's even, I think there's like a character named that is like Winston Noble or something. This book comes out 2 years after 1984 with Winston
Churchill,
Smith.
right, yeah.
And there is just a very, very powerful debt of structure to 1984 with kind of like fleeing a authoritarian city. And yeah.
Well, and the other, I mean, so Neil Postman, this is the question I've been chewing on. Neil Postman posits that there's two kinds of dystopian stories. There's the Huxleyan and there's the Orwellian. And the Huxleyan is one in which the society oppresses itself through its own attempts to assuage pain, through its own pleasure seeking. And the Orwellian is one where the authoritarian state emerges to oppress individuals. Which is this?
Yeah. This is Orwellian.
I would say it's both, though, right? At least according to Beatty's massive lore dump, that what he basically says is that it's the society that originally all the book banning started as various elements of society is not wanting to confront things that made them unhappy or made them angry, so yes, the government becomes authoritative and participates in that, but and also you have this long description of like the digests and the digest and the digest.
I know, it's like everything is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and
everything. It's like we don't read the book anymore. We read like the Reader's Digest version of Hamlet, so we can keep up with our neighbors. And then he's actually pretty accurately predicting like reality TV and just kind of the 24-hour stream of advertising and entertaining but innocuous content that television and social media provide. He didn't quite get the delivery mechanism right, although the parlor is not that different from a giant plasma screen TV. It's just the only difference is that the plasma screen TV you have to mount on your wall. The parlor, you just replace the whole damn wall.
And you exist in it. And it's this like the dialogue. The parlors are kind of my favorite set piece because it appears to be a set of like sort of like Harold Pinter-esque dialogues that go nowhere and have no plot.
Nowhere, right? Like I say that would be fine.
It's
like
just
and it appears, this is amazing. Like, it wouldn't have made a lot of sense 10 years ago. It appears to be generative AI powered tool, too. I mean, like, that essentially everybody gets to play a character in these vapid dramas, but like the TV announcer would be like, hello, Chris Bagg, what are you up to today? And that is technology that would be fueled by AI. Like, that's how you would do that.
There's another influence now of the Diamond Age, of the sort of acting stages, that one of our main characters, whose name I can't remember, from the female character from the Diamond Age, who eventually becomes the sort of mother figure.
The Ractors.
Right. Yeah, the Ractors. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I mean, I think we're getting around. I think this is the book's great strength, right? Which is that it is a powerhouse tour de force when it comes to ideas. It is, and it is often probably, you were even talking about like, oh, it's probably going to be Montague's house. You're suggesting that the plot's a little bit clunky, but in a way, it's sort of like, yeah, we've seen these ideas before from people who have imitated Ray Bradbury. That I think in many cases this is kind of an ur text, and it's original source for so many of the ideas in more contemporary
I mean, it's similar to
storytelling.
what you were talking about when we talked about The Bluest Eye, where you were like, oh, it's another book about, like these like sort of Bildungsroman for like young black women who were all probably influenced by this book.
Yes.
Like, yeah, I think you're right that it is a tour de force of ideas. And as a piece of craft, I think it's really bad.
Wow.
Yeah, I have been, I've been talking to several other friends about this over the past like week or so, where this is the first time I've read this. I've never read this in high school or middle school or whatnot. I have some real reservations about teaching this as a like good piece of literature to people that are in high school, because I think it is very badly written. I think the craft is bad. I think the dialogue is abysmal. I think the exposition is incredibly bad. I think it is a clunky plot. I think a lot of the metaphors, I think from a piece of, I've just been astonished at how immature and sophomoric the actual writing of this book is.
It's funny. I'm surprised to hear that, because I felt like a lot of those elements, I noticed many of the things that you're talking about, but I actually thought, I think Chris would actually enjoy this, because it's a more internal book, and actually feel like he's doing a lot of what you would associate with like the early 20th century moderns of kind of like very quick jumps and stream of conscious. Like it feels like Joyce sometimes, where we're like, the jets were flying overhead. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The sound, my God, man, the sound. Why doesn't anybody complain about it? And it's just, and then we're sort of like, then back into the stomach pumping, all of a sudden, and to me it felt, there's a Russian writer from that period whose name I'm not remembering, but who's sort of like the Russian Joyce. It felt, I've never read a Joyce novel all the way through, but I've read bits, and it reminded me of Joyce, where like a lot of stream of conscious, also reminded me of T.S. Eliot, like sometimes where you're just like, what in the hell is he talking about? But it kind of makes sense a little bit, and it's oddly compelling. So I'm sort of surprised. It's not that I disagree with any of those. I agree that there's all of those clunkinesses that you.
Well, here's my reason. My reason is that none of the characters feel real in a way that I can get on board with, and I think I was cued negatively right off the bat because of the depiction of Clarice McClellan, who is depicted in sort of a very icky, virginal, oh, I'm crazy, and like a little bit of like a love interest, and her face is the shape of a moon,
like
and
Foresme with Love and Squalor, or Natalie Portman in Beautiful Girls,
or in
too.
The Professional. And it's like, there's just not enough real characterization. The dialogue is so bad. I have several examples of, it's like he's trying to pull off, I mean, it reads like bad pulp to me. Like this would never stand up against the prose of Dashiell Hammett or Raymond Chandler, or even like less good noir writers of the 20s and 30s. And like, I mean, there's just this like, I mean, one of the passages that I found like intensely bad is the like, okay, I'm going to run, but before I'm going to run, here, Faber, here's a bunch of little errands that you could do. Turn on your sprinklers and then get all this alcohol and rub this down. And then I want you to get the mothballs out and
burn the throw rug.
It's just like this, like completely, you're like, it feels like it is such a first draft, and it is in such bad need of some additional writing. And like the fucking final metaphor that we come to is a phoenix, and you're like, dude, it's the 50s. Like, come on. Like, those ideas have been kicking around in the zeitgeist for hundreds of years.
Oh, see, that's, 'cause I actually found that part where Montag is sort of thinking through, and there are a couple parts like this where Montag and also Faber talk about the value of books, were some of my favorite parts. And often it was I have one marked, often it was the internality. And so I'm curious, because I found the book hard to read at times, but at those moments, I found myself drawn in, and I found myself moved from time to time. But so are you saying that the level of the difficulty that you had with the dialogue and the plotting and those things made it so that you did not have the experience of finding parts of this book that you really enjoyed?
Also, like, Jesus Christ, did you write this in the fall? What's up with all the autumn leaves? Were you listening to Autumn Leaves? Like, was that on repeat while Ray was like penning this? I don't have so this is when he meets Clarice. The autumn leaves blew over the moonlit pavement in such a way as to make the girl who was moving there seem fixed to a sliding walk, letting the motion of the wind and the leaves carry her forward. Her head was half bent to watch her shoes stir the circling leaves. Her face was slender and milk white, and in it was a kind of gentle hunger that touched over everything with tireless curiosity. It was a look almost of pale surprise. The dark eyes were so fixed to the world that no move escaped them. Her dress was white, and it whispered. He almost thought he heard the motion of her hands as she walked, and the infinitely small sound now, the white stir of her face turning when she discovered she was a moment away from a man who stood in the middle of the pavement waiting. Dude, focus. Focus, and, like, please stop this, like, rather uncomfortable just sort of like observation of this young girl who really turns out to only be a vehicle to reflect his like male kind of like stuff back at him, and then is like summarily kind of dispensed with. She gets fridged, Mildred gets fridged. Like I think the prose is purple, and I think it's bad. He brings up Dover Beach, and hilariously, sort of like the Texas thing that we were talking about that, like, oh, like a Bible is burned. Like, he brings up a poem that is itself a kind of like melodramatic male fantasy of something that then is, turned on its head by Anthony Hecht and the Dover Bitch. Yeah, I think it is a really poorly crafted. I think the writing is really bad. I didn't have any problems reading it, mostly because I was just kind of waiting for the next bad passage of either prose or dialogue. And it really, I'm really, this is probably my least favorite book that we've read.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm going to read a part that I like
awesome.
to you, and I'm curious if you like it too. So this is towards the end of part 1. This is after Captain Beatty has visited their house for the first time, and they've had the pep talk, and Montag is still not the pep talk / exposition dump. But remember, it fits that maxim, although I agree it's clumsy. So Beatty has left, and he's still not feeling great. And Montag, okay, so he and his wife Mildred are talking. Montag said, it's only a step from not going to work today to not working tomorrow, to not working at the firehouse ever again. You are going to work tonight, though, aren't you? Said Mildred. I haven't decided. Right now, I've got an awful feeling I want to smash things and kill things. Go take the Beetle. The Beetle is a car, by the way, sort of like a race car. Go take the Beetle. No thanks. The keys to the Beetle are on the night table. I always like to drive fast when I feel that way. You get up around 95 and you feel wonderful. Sometimes I drive all night and come back and you don't know it. It's fun out in the country. You hit rabbits. Sometimes you hit dogs. Go take the Beetle. No, I don't want to this time. I don't want to hold on to this funny thing. God, it's gotten big on me. I don't know what it is. I'm so damned unhappy. I'm so mad. I don't know why. I feel like I'm putting on weight. I feel fat. I feel like I've been saving up a lot of things, and I don't know what. I might even start reading books. They'd put you in jail, wouldn't they? She looked at him if he were behind a glass wall. He began to put on his clothes, moving restlessly about the bedroom. Yes, and it might be a good idea before I hurt someone. Did you hear Beatty? Did you listen to him? He knows all the answers. He's right. Happiness is important. Fun is everything. And yet I keep sitting here saying to myself, I'm not happy. I'm not happy. I am, Mildred's mouth beamed, and proud of it. I'm going to do something, said Montague. I don't even know what yet, but I'm going to do something big. I like the depiction of how Mildred's solutions to Montague's depressions are completely vapid, but that's never pointed out. I like that sort of. I like the comparison between Montague really struggling with like an existential problem, and his wife basically offering the solutions that this kind of suburban dystopia has, which is take the car out and drive fast, watch the thing on the TV. And I don't know. I thought it was a really, really nice moment, and it stood out to me.
Yeah, I can see that, especially with like that, especially with noting that in that section, Mildred is actually doing some showing. The craft is undercut a little bit by the telling of the narration on
I'm so damn unhappy, etc., etc.
Which is fine. It's fine that we are seeing him say that, so that's showing, but the dialogue is fairly insipid. But there's that line, she looked at him as if he were behind a glass wall, and I'm like, what does that even look like? Like, and there's just so much telling in this book. There is so much telling. And I just was getting very, very frustrated with the amount of telling in the narration. And, and then like when we get the scene of the women sort of like losing their shit over the poem, like that's another moment when it could be a showing moment. And instead we mostly get Montague being like, oh, well, they were so foolish. Like they were so, like, I found the prose and the dialogue so clunky. And don't get me wrong, I completely agree with you about the tour de force of ideas. Like, I just think that this could have been a short story, or with a good editor, it could have been a novel. And at the moment,
it feels like a short story. Actually, it kind of. I mean, but sorry, I cut you off.
No, I think I agree with you that I would be a lot happier. You know what? If this story tightened up, boiled down, we could have another Shirley Jackson's The Lottery. Because it comes at a certain moment in history, and if it were brief and direct, and if we took out a lot of exposition, and we took out, oh my God, so much monologuing, Jesus, like Beatty is like a mustache. He is mustached. He doesn't quite twirl his mustaches, but if he did have a handlebar mustache, he really would be twirling it. It could really be distilled down to something a lot punchier, without this kind of like incredibly self-satisfied male perspective, because it is very male. All of the women are treated very badly and drawn very badly. And it really feels to me that this is a book about preserving intellectual ideas for men.
Yeah, I see that. I don't have the same reaction. I didn't feel like Clarice was sexualized. To me, it was more that feeling you get when you talk to a precocious kid who... Sometimes precocious kids will allow you to see the world in a way that you haven't for a while. So to me, it was kind of like the wisdom of a child in that moment, and he was taken with that. But I agree, the other women are all yeah, I agree. It's very, very male. I mean, that was Bradbury's world, and he doesn't do much to puncture it in this. And you're right, all the intellectuals are men. Even all the writers they celebrate are men. Like, we never hear about Mary Shelley or Jane Austen or, George Eliot or any of the other great women, or Gertrude Stein or any of the great women writers who are available to draw on. So yeah, I think the sexism is there. I mean, I think there's three elements of this book that I like. I like the overall idea of it. And I like, it's not just about burning books, it's about something else that's deeper than that, and it never quite tells you what that is, and the characters dance around it. And my favorite sections are when the characters are articulating that to one another. I like the really, really stark contrast between the suburb and the city, and then when he escapes into nature, just the depictions of the essentialism of the world outside the city, when he sees the deer, when he's hanging out with the hobo intellectuals. I like that, and it both serves the allegory and serves the plot in a organic way that was rare in this book. I often felt like the needs of the allegory overwhelmed the needs of plotting or naturalism or character development. I guess it's those three things. I like the overall, I like the allegory of it, but I think that Bradbury, he's like writing an allegory here, and it was kind of hard. It was hard often to picture the landscape this was occurring in. It was almost as though it was like occurring. I've used this analogy before. It felt sort of like it was all happening in a black box theater, but more like an infinite black box theater, where it's sort of like, here's three houses, and that's all you can see. Here's a giant road that stretches for infinity. Here is a big river. And the one time that got a little bit better was when he got in the river, got out of the river, and he started describing the countryside and talking about dew. And anytime the characters described the country, that was always sort of vivid and interesting too. So I guess I like it a little bit more than you do. And but I don't disagree with any of the elements that you've identified that you don't like. I think I kind of just like read through them quickly and then luxuriated in the parts that I did like.
Yeah, I mean, I think it struck me so much about like just how awkwardly bad a lot of the writing was. And yeah, I mean, I would say that your depiction of like, it feels a little under-realized. It feels like a infinite black box. Like, I would just say, like my, we're going to pour another one out for Diane Leahy, my high school AP English teacher. She said, you have to write it so that if we were on the phone and you were reading it to me, I could draw it. And that's not, it's not exactly right, but that's a really good way of saying what good writing is if we're talking in the descriptive mean. And you can't do that with this book. Like, it's sketchy. The best descriptive passages are of things burning. Which, it's like, okay, cool. If you're going to write a book about burning books, then and that's what you've got in your toolbox at the moment.
I love the first paragraph, like the kerosene coming out of the bronze nozzle. Like, that was good.
It feels so sketchy to me, which is why I'm so pissed off. Like, because I don't want this to be it's sort of like when we were talking about The Bluest Eye. If I were teaching this, I would contextualize the shit out of it by being like, guys, this is not the place to look for descriptive writing. It's not the place to look for dialogue. This is not the way that you handle exposition. This is not the way you deploy literary device. Like, the only thing we're going to talk about is the socio-political ideas about censorship. It belongs less in an English classroom and more in a civics or social studies classroom. All right, I have a fun section, I think. Okay. It's sort of I think the Dover Bitch is going to be too long, and I have a more fun exercise. It is going to involve me playing some audio, so you might have to you'll have to turn on sharing for me. But first, I'm going to read from page 125. This is a passage between Montague and Faber, the old man. when Montauk is basically discovering like, okay, I have to run. I feel alive for the first time in years, said Faber. I feel I'm doing what I should have done a lifetime ago. For a little while, I'm not afraid. Maybe it's because I'm doing the right thing at last. Maybe it's because I've done a rash thing and I don't want to look the coward to you. I suppose I'll have to do even more violent things, exposing myself so I won't fall down on the job and turn scared again. What are your plans? To keep running. You know the war's on? I heard. God, isn't it funny, said the old man. It seems so remote because we have our own troubles. I haven't had time to think. Montauk drew out $100. I want this to stay with you. Use it any way that'll help when I'm gone. But I might be dead by noon. Use this.
Like, did you listen to this or read it or both?
Both. I listened to Tim Robbins' version.
I listened to Tim Robbins' version too, and I think it's the power of a good actor because, like, I feel like he played that scene in a way that made it better than what you just read. I actually feel like his depiction of their conversation to each other, and it landed for me better when I listened to Tim Robbins do it.
And I'm hamming it up, but I'm hamming it up in order to point out.
Yeah, no, you weren't trying to naturalistically perform it. No, I agree. It's not great writing, but it is also sometimes the power of a good actor can elevate a bad script if he inhabits the characters well. I do not think Tim Robbins did a good job with the women, and I think it aggravated that element that you were describing, which was already there, and maybe it was intentional. Maybe Tim Robbins was pointing that out.
Sure. Maybe he had a bad day. Maybe like Okay.
Well, I don't know that Tim Robbins is a great audiobook narrator, I have to say, because he basically has like 3 voices he can do. It's sort of like normal white male, southern white male, old white male, and then the women are all just kind of like screechy falsetto.
Yeah, exactly.
and Mildred in particular, she's like, I don't know why I feel so bad. I don't know. And you're just like, oh God, like it was not a wonderful depiction. He's a great actor. Like, I mean, Tim Robbins is a great actor. I just don't think he was a great narrator for the dialogic passages between the men and the women in this book.
I read the first 2/3 of it, and then I was on a bike ride and listened to the last of it, and then finished it up. But this is from a film from the 70s, I believe. And hopefully you will understand where I'm going.
I'll probably be killed. And I wanted to take this time, if I don't see you again, to say that I love you.
Boris.
I've always loved you ever since we were kids. I was heartbroken when you loved Ivan, but I still love you.
Why didn't you say something?
Would it have mattered?
Oh, of course not, darling.
If by some miracle I'm not killed tomorrow, would you marry me?
What do you think the odds are?
To die before the harvest. The crops, the grains, fields of rippling wheat. Wheat. All there is in life is wheat.
Sonia, here's your chance to do something kind for a dying boy. But I don't really love Boris. I mean, I love him, but I'm not in love with him.
Oh, wheat. Lots of wheat. Fields of wheat. A tremendous amount of wheat.
And yet he loves me, and he would make a devoted husband. Not too exciting, but devoted. We could have a family. Maybe not our own. We could rent one. I could learn to love him. Me, Boris, and 6 rented children. Or would I feel trapped, suffocated, can't breathe? Open a window. No, not that one. The one in the bathroom.
Yellow wheat, red wheat, wheat with feathers, cream of wheat.
Poor boy, dueling with Anton the Betekoff. By this time tomorrow morning, my beloved cousin Boris will look like a Swiss cheese. Promise him anything. Make him happy for a night. Oh, or would I feel trapped, suffocated, my youth gone, living with a Swiss cheese and rented children? Of course I'll marry you, Boris. It would be an honor for me.
Woody Allen's film Love and Death with the great Diane Keaton. And that is one of the that is what I felt like I was reading. And I mean, like, this is this is, what we're making fun of here is sort of the Tolstoyan long passages of, kind of agrarian, splendor.
Noble
Yeah.
people getting ready to go to war.
Yeah, exactly. And
wringing their hand, right?
And those are great books that they're being held up for humor here, but at least Love and Death knows what it is doing and what it's trying to do. And then the other piece of text that I wanted to share, did I put it in the rundown? I didn't, but I've got it right here. You want to play on your Xbox, I ask? He laughs loudly. No, Anastasia. No Xbox. No PlayStation. Come. Producing a key from his pocket, he unlocks yet another door and takes a deep breath. You can leave any time. The helicopter is on standby to take you wherever you want to go. You can stay the night and go home in the morning. It's fine, whatever you decide. Just open the damn door, Christian. He opens the door and stands back to let me in. I gaze at him once more. I so want to know what's in here. Taking a deep breath, I walk in, and it feels like I've time traveled back to the 16th century and the Spanish Inquisition.
So coming up next on Upper Middle Brow, 50 Shades of Grey.
Yep. Yeah. The grand tradition of Ray Bradbury from Fahrenheit 451. I just...
This reminds me of stop talking about my damn penis. Yeah, I hear it. I see it. Of course, that book did really, really well. I don't know that Shades of Grey is the ideas tour de force.
I'm being a jerk. I'm being a jerk about the writing. I just like... Yeah, I know I'm like not usually the heel, but like I am so angry about the level of writing in this book and the level of like classic enduring high school curricula everywhere that I want to be like, oh my God, please take this off.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've unveiled the hidden meanie inside Chris Bagg's gentle exterior. It took Ray Bradbury to bring it out. Well, I feel like part of it is that I think maybe part of it is that you're often so kind to writers and their clunkiness. I think you invented the phrase. I think it's intentional that like now when that excuse could no longer hold, you're just all the more betrayed by the clunkiness of the writing. Yeah. But other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play?
It wasn't fun. I feel so offended by the low level of characterization, like the low level of effort. And like, I was trying, like you start doing the thing where you're like, well, it's 1950s, but then I'm like, no. No. The Great Gatsby is 30 years old. John Updike is writing right now. Nabokov is writing. Like there are so many absolutely amazing writers that are. Willa Cather is writing. Like, it's just not good enough.
Well, let me. I think I mostly agree with you, but if I'm gonna, I think things are more fun when we have straw men. Yeah. If I were gonna make a justification, okay, you would not expect Everyman or whatever the Trials of Everyman to have realistic characters or naturalistic descriptions. I think this is an allegory, and I think it's dealing with big ideas. They burn books with fire, right? It's not a likely scenario, although the Nazis did in fact burn books with fire. But, I mean, the firemen burn books with the fire hose, right? Like the institution of the supposedly benevolent government that's supposed to protect us is actually destroying human knowledge. The suburbs all sort of look the same. People entertain themselves by driving around in the countryside, what's left of the land that has been turned into the suburbs, and killing turtles and dogs for sport while driving so fast that they get an adrenaline shock from the danger of it. And the intellectuals, the heroes of human knowledge, have literally been cast out of the city to live in the swamps, in the murk, in the mud. They are literally homeless, and they have memorized books. And every single one of these humans has become a torch of knowledge. We're dealing with allegory here. And I think that allegory sometimes can permit badly drawn characters and badly drawn plot if it's a useful allegory.
My answer to that would be that if you can't pull off the basics of, if you can't carry your fictional work in a bucket, write me a goddamn essay.
I think I liked The Arrest more than you did. But this is the thing that I think The Arrest did really well, is I thought it really balanced its storytelling and its allegory very, very effectively, masterfully.
The more that I think about The Arrest, the more that it comes up in my brain, because I have not been able to stop thinking about that book. My opinion of it softens, and the more that I like it. I mean, I still prefer some of his other stuff, but yeah, I think it's a good, my especially now, it's like, okay, well, that's an allegory, but it's certainly doing a better job than this one.
There are a couple moments where I thought the description of the car that almost runs him over in the middle of the road was good, although again it got sort of overly dramatic, like it's coming, and there it's almost upon him, and then it's upon him, and then he's in the lights, and but the basic vivid imagery of like a 7-lane road that's empty, and he starts crossing it, and it takes him so long to cross it that in the time he crosses it, teenagers driving like 100 miles an hour almost kill him. I liked the vividness of that imagination. I like the descriptions of the mechanical hound with the proboscis quite a bit.
Very clear. That's a very clear moment of narration.
Yeah. That first opening paragraph, which we could probably even find the brass nozzle spraying kerosene, the roof of the houses collapsing. And to your point, I think Bradbury has the qualities necessary to write more effectively. So I think you're right. Maybe he did need a better editor. I also wonder why he could get away with it. Maybe it's those ideas were so powerful in 1953 that you just had to gesture at them, and we had just come out of World War II and we're just in the post-war boom. And the idea that we're just out in the midst of the Red Scare. So the idea that somebody is throwing up a flag and say, hey, we're going in a dangerous direction here, people. Yeah. Maybe people are really hungry for that kind of resistance, and he could sort of get away with a clumsily written book.
I think it did function as an essay. I think that that's the thing, is that it does. But 1984 is an allegory, but it's very well written. So it's I will not read this book again.
I don't know if I will or not. I might, just because I'm sort of intrigued. But there are also moments of interesting modernism. Actually, I think the moment where he goes from the internality around the sound of the jets to the stomach pumping was sort of well rendered. It's like because if you remember it, I can almost sort of do it from memory. I might be able to find the passage in my copy, but it's sort of like the jets went overhead, 1, 2 bomber jets, and then that transition. I had to listen to it twice. The jet bombers going over. This is the part that reminded me of Joyce, or one of the first parts where I got that. The jet bombers. As he stood there, the sky over the house screamed. There was a tremendous ripping sound, as if 2 giant hands had torn 10,000 miles of black linen down the seam. Montauk was cut in half. He felt his chest chopped down and split apart. The jet bombers going over. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 6 of them, 9 of them, 12 of them. One, and another, and another did all the screaming for him. This also kind of reminds me of T.S. Eliot. He opened his own mouth and let their shriek come down and out between his bared teeth. The house shook. The flare went out of his hand. The moonstones vanished. He felt his hand plunge towards the telephone. The jets were gone. He felt his lips move, brushing the mouthpiece of the phone. Emergency hospital. A terrible whisper. He felt the stars had been pulverized by the sound of the black jets, and that in the morning the earth would be covered with their dust like a strange snow. That was his idiot thought as he stood shivering in the dark and let his lips go on moving and moving. paragraph break. They had this machine. They had two machines, really. One of them slid down into your stomach like a black cobra down an echoing well looking for all the old water and the old time gathered there. He's now describing the stomach pumping. I liked that pairing, although I think the jets were a bit overwritten and over dramatic, although there was some nice poetry. There's some nice music there, I thought. The way he used the sort of pacing of the jets going overhead and his sort of neurotic fixation with them. And that's nicely tied up with, the jets are kind of happening throughout. And as the reader, we're like, is this just sort of the noise of this world? But at the very end, that's what leads to the destruction of the city. So they prove to be, foreshadowing.
Yeah. I mean, he does enough of that stuff, which is good. Like there is a good short story here. It's not
a very long novel, right? Like,
yeah, it's
180
pages or something. So, but like that next sentence, one of them slid down into your stomach like a black cobra down an echoing well. Ditch the echoing and stop the sentence at well. Please don't say looking for all the old water and the old time gathered there. What's a cobra doing looking for water and time? Like,
that's what cobras do. They look for. Yeah, no, I see.
Love that.
It's a tortured metaphor.
yeah, that's what with snake charmers. Like those cobras are in the baskets because that's where they keep the time, the old time.
That's where they keep the time, the old time. You want to do some trivia?
Yeah, you're the host. You go first.
All right. So I got kind of. Actually, I gotta pull up my document here. Sorry, 1 second. I got kind of intrigued by the mystery of where this is taking place. At first, I thought maybe it was like Jersey outside of New York. Then I thought maybe it was like Philly. And I think it is intentionally no place in particular. I think it is a mid-sized American city, but big enough for a subway. And that was a clue. And so I looked up which American cities had subways. Now, of course, this is set in the future, so I don't think it really matters because Ray Bradbury might be speculating that whatever city this is got a subway. But it just got me curious about, well, how many American cities have subways anyway? So that's what the trivia question is about.
I love it.
So which of these American cities does not currently have a subway? I also have a bonus question for you, which I think is kind of fun. But which of these American cities does not currently have a subway? A, Cleveland. B, San Juan, Puerto Rico. C, Denver.
Cleveland, San Juan, Denver. I'm going to go with Denver.
Correct.
Hooray!
Nice work. I wouldn't have guessed any of those cities had a subway.
Well, let's see. So Cleveland is enough of an East Coast city with like there's enough East Coast cities that where like subways are a thing. And
yeah, you're right. I mean, Boston's not a huge city, but it has a subway.
And and like
same with
DC
Philly.
has one.
Baltimore has a subway.
Like
yeah,
there's enough where it's like I was like, okay. And then like San Juan felt to me like the red herring option. And then as you get into the West, like there are like geological issues with certain areas. And I wasn't going to, Denver didn't really seem like a place that has like a lot of seismic activity, but maybe there's something about the weather and the snow that makes it difficult to install a subway there.
Well, L.A. and San Francisco both have subways, even though there are seismic issues. Denver, I think, would be a pretty good category for one. I think it was just maybe too recently built. Subways are really, really expensive, and we don't spend that kind of money on
public works
infrastructure
anymore. Yeah, no, it's one of those. Well, it's just like, I mean, so much of the beauty of the early 20th century and 19th century, so much of those like absolutely gorgeous infrastructure things that like, really powered the nostalgia of America, which I really think is a problem that we don't do anymore. It's a real shame that we don't do that.
I mean, we did just do like a $1 trillion infrastructure bill. They're building they're going to build a train, a high-speed rail from San Francisco to LA that's supposed to get there in 2 hours
That's
or something
amazing.
like that.
That's gonna be.
I mean,
yeah.
I'm sure that if we elect Donald Trump, he'll kill it, and that won't actually happen. But there is some funding for some great stuff like that. Two bonus things. There is a subway in Honolulu, which I thought was kind of cool.
That's very cute. I love that.
And then this is a bonus trivia question. If you get it right, it can be extra credit. But if you get it wrong,
can this make up my half ding from the last
Yeah,
episode?
it'll make up your half ding in full buzz. Okay. Which of these writers that we have considered on this podcast, considered doesn't necessarily mean we read one of their books. We may have talked about their book. Which of the writers that we have considered on this podcast was included in a Ray Bradbury tribute collection in which they all wrote new stories in Bradbury's style? Was it A, Jonathan Lethem, B, William Gibson, C, Margaret Atwood, or D, Larry Niven?
Oh my God! If this is the moment that it's Niven, oh God, this would be.
I mean, it's as plausible as any of them, right?
I know. Oh God. I was waiting for Philip K. Dick in there. Niven, Atwood, Lethem, and who was the other one?
William Gibson.
Fuck. Lethem.
It's Margaret Atwood.
Damn it. I want to read that.
Yeah, me too. I wonder if it's as overwritten as this
No, I
book.
want to.
The book is called, what's it called? Shadow Show. Mm-hmm. New stories in celebration of Ray Bradbury. It also includes Neil Gaiman, Harlan Ellison, and Mort Castle, and a bunch of other writers.
That sounds fun.
But those were the ones that really stood out to me. Neil Gaiman trying to write like Ray Bradbury would be amazing.
That would be great. He would really have to rein it in. We should check out that book.
We should read some Neil Gaiman at some point too. I'll definitely share the book on social media.
Okay. After finishing the book, so this is one of those moments where
what did Chris Bagg do?
After Bradbury finishes the book and publishes the book, this is one of those moments that puts the lie to my maybe it was intentional. Bradbury discovers that Montague's name is a very, very fitting other product that exists in the world. So, is Montague a paper company, a pencil company, or a lighter company?
A mechanical match. I have a very strange recollection of seeing a Montague emblem on a pencil that I very well might be making up, but I'm going to go with a pencil company.
So I think the pencil that you're thinking of is the Faber Pencil Company, which he also discovered after the fact that his protagonist is basically, named for a paper company, and his protagonist sort of major helper is named for a pencil company. And he didn't know. Apparently he was surprised and sort of tickled pink. Which I do want to say, I'm going to go read the Martian Chronicles to kind of wash the taste of Fahrenheit 451 out of my mouth. Ray Bradbury is an excellent writer. And I think that maybe this is early and it's sketchy. And I think that he was really writing from a place of political desire, really trying to get a political point across. And I think, I don't know if it's Pablo Neruda, but there are plenty of other writers out there that have said things like, you can do politics, but boy, you got to be careful. And I just don't think he was being careful.
One of his heroes is Jonathan Swift. And there are allusions to Gulliver's Travels in this too. And in fact, I think Montague burns Gulliver's Travels, which he refers to as that evil political book or something like that, or that evil political satire.
Did you catch the Ed Murrow line? Somebody literally says good night and good luck. And I think it's like...
I didn't catch that.
I think it's like the fascist on the like television, and I was like, what?
I did not catch that, no, but I had that feeling from the broadcast announcer, also sort of Walter Cronkite, although who was, I believe, one of Murrow's boys. There definitely were some digs at the Reader's Digest. At one point, there was a reference to their, like, I am Jack's liver. They were like, at one point, one of the characters is sort of like, what good is it to do to read about Jack's fingernails or something like that. But yeah, he was taking some swipes. And I mean, depiction of a world where people ignore the important issues of the day and eschew real knowledge for big screen-based entertainment that's been customized to their needs, and basically vote for whoever looks the part and feels good.
Yeah.
What was he thinking? That's nothing like the world that we know.
Yeah, and that, I mean, like... Yeah, I mean, that's why I wish the book were better, because like the things that he gets right, he gets so right. And like those ideas married to like, like a passable narrative, I'd be like, this is amazing. And I'm so pissed because like he or an editor didn't take the time to do the work.
So you've already said you won't read this again. I don't know if I will. There's certain passages that haunt me, that stick with me. I could see picking this up again at some point, particularly if I ever, I don't know that I'm likely to have kids, but if I did, I do think that kids should read this book, even though it's difficult for the ideas at some point. But what's next is The Kite Runner. We're not doing 2 episodes on Fahrenheit 451, which Chris might be very happy about. But we are going to do 2 episodes about The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini, the 2003? No, I think it's even earlier than that. It came out about 20 years ago.
It might be 2001.
Set in Afghanistan. It's one of those books where it's like I'm always seeing it at libraries and bookstores, and I'm like, oh, that looks like an important book that I should read. And I've never picked it up.
Well, Upper Middle Brow is a Small Point production. Chris Bagg and Jesse Dukes are the hobo intellectuals. You nailed it.
True.
Yep. That's very correct. Music by Ben Pajak and Jesse Dukes. Design and website by me, Chris Bagg. You can learn more about us and find our listener survey at uppermiddlebrow.com. And please review us in your podcast app. It really helps other people find our show.
It makes us feel good. And a reminder, Chris and I are both writers and editors and can help you with your writing, podcasting, editing, or book burning project. You can see some of our portfolios and learn more at our respective websites, chrisbagg.com and jessedukes.com. For now.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.